for joining us. It's a pleasure to be here and to join in this webinar focused on Lightspeed Alert. Now, running webinars for teachers and school staff at 3:30 has taught me a few things, and that is that generally people need another couple of minutes to get themselves organized. And I can see from the numbers that people are still coming in and numbers are still increasing. So it's a bit of a usual party trick for me here to give 2 minutes, just a couple of minutes for people to get settled. It is a chance to get a drink or get some water or stretch your legs just for a minute, and we'll look to get started in just 2 minutes time. Thank you for joining with us and be with you in just a couple of moments. Welcome to those of you who are just joining us. It may seem a little weird to come and join complete silence, but maybe you missed the slight bit at the beginning where I said I was just giving another couple of moments for people to join. We'll make a start in just about 60 seconds. Okay, everyone. Well, let's make a start. Thank you again for joining us and giving up a little bit of your afternoon to be with us. It is great to see so many of you. That 2-minute bit at the beginning helps to get all the numbers settled and make sure you don't miss out on that first little bit of content. It also gives me a chance to have a little flick through the attendees list and to see who's there and see who I'm talking to. And I recognize some names, of course, through the list. A mixture definitely in the room of some IT directors of IT and staff working from that technical side, but also plenty coming from that safeguarding side. And that's really, really delightful. I love to have both in the room. I think it's very important for the topic that we're going to be discussing today, which is just about what Lightspeed Alert can do to try and make your role, either of those roles, easier. And I'll give a little bit of context in a moment as to why we're discussing this and how this fits before boiling down to sort of 4 key areas that we see within the Lightspeed Alert tool that we have and we promote and that we love, and really how it makes your job a bit easier and supports what you're doing from a safeguarding standpoint. My name's Colin McCabe. I'm the International Director at Lightspeed. I'm previously a teacher and previously was converted to ultimately move across and work for Lightspeed based on the Lightspeed Alert product. I was a customer first and really drank that Kool-Aid as just the power of the notifications that Lightspeed Alert could provide really convinced me that I needed to come and join the company and evangelize for our mission to continue to making students safe. The company, Lightspeed, hopefully is a company that you've heard of, but perhaps not. Definitely recognizing some existing customers of ours in the attendees list, but definitely some that are not there. and also some names I'm not familiar with from some schools or multi-academy trusts that we support. So it's worth me spending just a second at the beginning, that context around Lightspeed and the authority that we speak with when we talk about a tool that we have designed specifically for education. All of the solutions that we provide are really dedicated to students, school students in the school space under 18s. And we're predominantly known for internet filtering and other proactive monitoring tools like we're discussing today, but we've got a wider portfolio I'll touch on in a moment. All in all, that encompasses us protecting and supporting around 25 million students and nearly 12 million devices now in about 41 countries. And my role now at Lightspeed is to do sessions like this to talk and add value and hopefully provide a little bit of a narrative onto your safeguarding thoughts and discussions that you're having internally. And also to lead our sales teams and our customer success teams in the UK in particular, but also in Europe as well. So that keeps me quite busy as we're in over 41 countries today, and hopefully that number will be increasing. A little bit more about Lightspeed around the sort of 4 pillars that we like to frame our company and to help you give that understanding. I'm going to talk to you about Lightspeed Alert, one of the tools in our platform, which I believe and believed when I was a customer is a cut above when it comes to the technology that we've got under the hood. And the reality is we believe that in all of the products that we've got in our portfolio of 5. We see ourselves as a technology leader in this space, making sure that we provide those comprehensive tools that are designed specifically for schools. And that education focus is really a core tenet to what we are doing. There are not many companies that can operate at the size and scale that we do without stepping out of that schools market. But we are laser focused on making sure everything that we do is geared towards the delivery of high quality education using digital devices. And when you're working with students, you need to make sure that you are doing so in a very safe and secure way. And without going into all of the details, if we look at our security credentials, we tick all of the boxes to make sure that we're looking after student data, we're being respectful of the way that we are looking after any of the information that we hold for you as a school. And all of this, of course, comes through an unrelenting focus to make sure that we are delivering new functionality that schools and teachers really need, supporting new trends and new considerations for students as they emerge across the landscape of the schools market that we work in. I've mentioned a couple of times that sort of platform and portfolio, just to finish off and rounding off what that actually means. It means 5 different products and tools that we actually support. I've mentioned content filtering, something we're really well known for in Lightspeed Filter in the top left. Top right, skipping over Alert for a second, is our classroom management tool, allowing you to see the screens of students and share links and control the student devices by locking them down to aid instructional and educational effectiveness. On the bottom row, we've got our mobile device management tool at MDM, supporting iPad and Mac devices and making sure that they are configured correctly for education, for all the correct security and settings, and supporting provisioning of apps, etc., to make those that a very smooth experience. And our Lightspeed Digital Insight Analytics tool, which supports gathering all of the information about software that's being used across your estate and presenting that to you in a really informative way to help you make decisions about which software licenses you're really making value from, how technology is being used full stop in the classrooms across your school or across your multi-academy trust or across your region, your state, your local authority. And that just leaves Lightspeed Alert, the focus of today, the proactive monitoring tool that is analyzing the content that is being typed, written by students, and looking for markers and potential risks, flagging the ones that are most important to you to help you take early intervention where someone may be at risk of harming themselves or harming others. That's the context, and we're going to unpack that quite a bit more now as we continue into the presentation. Ultimately, with trying to unpick well, why? Why is it important that we look at a proactive alerting tool? Because the context that many of you are operating with, I know from my many discussions with schools, is that you have a filtering tool which blocks the internet, makes sure that the correct web pages are there and are allowed, and the more harmful parts are blocked. That's a great layer of defense, and filtering exists in legislation, has done for a while, and I'll touch on that in a second too. But going the next step beyond that really comes down to what you're doing with monitoring. The term monitoring, as defined in guidance, is really something I'm going to really focus on again as well in my presentation here. But it's about the timeliness of that notification. We see a lot of people who will look at their filtering logs maybe once a week or every couple of days to check for trends and understand what's going on. But unfortunately, for some students, that information can come a little bit too late, or indeed it's very hard to surface that information. And I don't want to pull on your heartstrings with some real sort of direct examples. I definitely have them, however, and I'm a strong advocate for times that Lightspeed Alert has been a tool that has provided the only insight into a student feeling perhaps suicidal or suffering from other aspects of self-harm, or sharing an explicit image of themselves, something self-generated without giving it due consideration, or who was considering harming themselves or harming another student. And being able to surface that information and get that to the safeguarding staff in a timely fashion is something that is an increasingly important part of our landscape as we use digital technology more and more. The landscape itself is also a really scary place. I've given you a few of those practical examples as you might think edge cases or scenarios. However, we know that is not the trend that we're seeing. The trend that we're seeing, worryingly, is that it's much more common for our students to have considerations of mental health or poor mental health or needing support. And the fact that 20% of our teenagers who are going through our schooling system, who are with us for 8 hours a day, 6-7 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 30 weeks of the year, means that we definitely intersect with a lot of the issues, and we support in as many ways as we can. And we want to get as much opportunities to share, to be able to confide, to have conversations, to make sure that we're there and supporting these students that we have a responsibility for. More shockingly, I guess, to me, certainly, was the percentage who have maybe actually looked to take some action on their feelings. It's one thing to feel a little bit unsure of yourself, to want to reach out and to get some help, and to feel in a state that's certainly less than positive. But the alarm for me is that those who are taking action without due consideration, who are maybe quite reactionary, who are acting on impulse, and who really need a guiding hand and an adult to support them. What we're finding increasingly as well is that there are often clues and markers. And although the statistic isn't on the screen, we know that in somewhere between 60 to 70% of cases where there is an attempted suicide, there is markers and information that are available. Some of them digital, that Lightspeed Alert would see, some of them not, of course, but I would rather know them than not. And having a proactive tool will allow you to get to have more insight and visibility. And it's not just me that's saying this. Ultimately, we're increasing the amount of guidance that's coming from the UK government in particular around this particular issue. And we've seen some significant changes in keeping children safe in education in 2023. And likewise, the references it made to the filtering and monitoring standards published just March the year before, which talked more directly about monitoring itself. We can talk about filtering in another day. We're really focusing on that word monitoring, I guess, today. And ultimately, we talk about the idea of effective monitoring referenced through the guidance. And it's a really interesting point, because effective monitoring could be anything from a student who walks the room and looks at the screens of students. Effective monitoring could maybe be reviewing those filtering logs and making a decision as to whether or not they are appropriate, and what is happening is appropriate, or if there are any harms for concerns, right the way up to effective monitoring being tools that provide notifications. And that effective monitoring concept is something that's been around for a little while. This is one of the quotes that you can see, and you've probably had a time to digest this one, which still keeps things relatively broad in those three contexts of walking the room or seeing the student screen and looking at the logs. But we have an increased guidance in the second paragraph and second quote from this particular document. If mobile or app technologies are used, so what does that mean? Well, devices that maybe move with students in a one-to-one scenario, or just an application that's being used for online learning, perhaps. If they're being used, you should apply a technical monitoring system to those devices. Technical monitoring, of course, could still link to filtering, but increasingly that interpretation is being linked to a tool specifically designed to pick up on context clues that our students require some support. We then start to focus our conversation not so much, I guess, on should we be gathering the information? Should we be collecting it? Do we have a responsibility to be notified, to be able to review that information of our students and collect it in the first place? But if you're collecting it, how are we getting that to the right people? And you will know that Keeping Children Safe in Education made specific focus on the designated safeguarding lead as being that person who should have that responsibility and that central focus, where often before it had fallen to IT staff. But we're alongside the direct guidance that it should be the DSL, we also get some support suggesting that we need to make sure it's actually in an interpretable, easy to use and easy to understand format. And again, you have no surprises for guessing that that's certainly one of the key components that we've designed into Lightspeed Alert. But gone, hopefully, are the days of receiving Excel spreadsheets of rows of information that you have to sift through. And it should now be about making sure that it's a format that is easy to understand and to use. And of course, that the users who are involved are identifiable. We don't want our students just logging into a device without any way of tracing back that browsing history or that activity to that individual student. That's a major call out, particularly for students for schools who are using iPads in a shared way. It can often be very difficult to make sure that you're able to trace back the users in that scenario. Something, again, that the Lightspeed tools and platform can support with, although there's also some organizational changes and logistical changes that we would, of course, want to discuss with you too in that regard. So the guidance is saying that we should be collecting this information. The guidance is saying that we should make it easier, that we should help and present the information to educational safeguarding staff in a way that's easy to use. And that's just one of sort of the 4 tenets that I want to be able to talk to you about today. I guess it probably comes under the number 3, the context that you need and how we present that. You'll see some screenshots from our interface that will reinforce this as I talk about each of these 4 pillars to help you get a bit of a flavor. But I'm going to talk about through them in numerical order, starting talking about how we're reducing false positives and making sure that the risks that we are surfacing to the safeguarding leads are real and have a factual basis for what they are doing. Then I'm going to talk about just how broad our coverage is before I talk a little bit more about the context I mentioned before. And then 4, about how we layer and help a little bit more with our UN review staff. But I am just going to pause for a second before I embark on those 4, because often when I deliver these presentations, giving you the context behind the scenes is fairly straightforward in the guidance. There's not tend to be too many questions, but it would be remiss of me not to call out the chat functionality that we have within the webinar. And as I'm talking you through some of the principles around Lightspeed Alert and ultimately how it can help support your safeguarding needs, there may be questions that come up. And I wanted to encourage you to drop them into the box, because once I've gone through 1, 2, 3, and 4, we're on the final section of our webinar discussing Q&A and getting a chance for you to really steer that last 10, 15 minutes of our conversation that I can make sure I'm answering any of the direct points that are pertinent to you. So please feel free throughout the presentation to include any comments that you'd like to ask, any questions, and I'll get to them at the end if I can, and if I don't, of course, I'll make sure that we follow up afterwards as well. So please feel free to use that functionality. And I'm going to delve into number one about the idea of surfacing a risk that is credible. And in doing so, I wanted to give you the sort of illustration of the process that we're going through and exactly how this piece of information might flow. Ultimately, it starts with capturing the data, something that is being typed by a student. And we'll talk about more about in the coverage exactly what that looks like. But they've entered something into a digital device that is being monitored by Lightspeed Alert. Anything at all, every bit of text that they are sent makes it to stage 2 for it to be analyzed and defined ultimately. And this is a really interesting step and a really bit where we stand out against other tools in the market. We are not just taking the word or suicide or the word knife or the word kill in isolation, because what we find and what we know is that there are many plausible and educational needs for you to do this. Some form of research, looking up a statistic of suicide rate in the United Kingdom. We don't want just to ping an alert every single time that there is context there. But that definition process uses machine learning models to look at individual words and phrases and then dig a little bit deeper. Look at the context of words before, look at the context of words after, looking at the browsing that happens just after or the browsing that happens just before, and ultimately develop a risk profile and a risk percentage for that particular typed piece of information. In many, many, many cases, there is no risk. It's a benign piece of text linked to the delivery of the curriculum. And of course, that information is wiped, forgotten, dropped, never stored. But of course, where we're increasing that risk and that confidence that the machine learning model has that there is something here, it will move on to the next one. We have a range of settings in our tool to be able to make sure that we're surfacing what you need. We are able to provide, either a low, medium, and high risk definition or imminent threat definition for each of the categories that we monitor: self-harm, violence, bullying, drugs, weapons, and explicit contents or imagery. For each of those, you can choose what level you're looking for and ultimately be able to decide if the particular alert meets the criteria. And then, of course, it goes forward to creating that alert. All of that beginning of the process, we have found, and we hear from schools across the UK and across many other countries too, that we are reducing the amount of alerts that are actually being generated. In some cases, people get a little worried. They're like, I haven't had an alert this morning. Why is that? Because they've maybe been used to receiving 60 alerts because one class were searching self-harm as part of a valid piece of curriculum content, or they were looking at murder in an English literature class, for example, and suddenly 30 pings, 30 alerts would be generated from that one class alone. By trying to remove those risks and trying to remove those, or quasi-risks, I should say, and then ultimately false positive risks, by removing those, we're reducing the noise and we're allowing the safeguarding lead to get on with their day until there is something that is really concerning that they need to take action on. Only then do we enter that bottom row of this diagram and we create the alert, we notify you, and we also, where it's a high risk, notify our internal human review team, who are point number 4 that I'll come back to in just a second. So there we are. We're attempting to make sure that we're reducing false positives from that, using our machine learning models for good to make sure that we are looking at the true context behind an alert and to see exactly if it has an imminent threat, if it has a high risk. Is there just a chance that it's a risk, or is it very, very low, or indeed completely dropped out? And of course, number 2, as I mentioned, is about that coverage. So if the first step is that we need to capture the information, you need a tool that is capturing from the broadest amount of places. And ultimately, when you're looking at Lightspeed Alert, we have a three-pronged approach that we can support. This is very different to others in the marketplace. We have something that can be installed directly on the device. So that means anytime they're typing text into a text box on a device, that we will be able to capture the text that they're reading, internalize it, and we will be able to then follow the rest of that flow and do that analysis and definition. But increasingly, what we're seeing as well is that it's not just about protecting the device. The device, maybe it's a laptop or a Chromebook provided by the trust or provided by the school. It's got a school sticker on the back. It's definitely an asset of the school, and we have a responsibility to monitor it. During school time or in a one-to-one program, even when that device goes home, we can see the responsibility of this is a school-owned device and it's school property and it needs to be treated as such, and we need to safeguard it. But increasingly what we're seeing is that the idea of the school email address or the school productivity platform, the account that gives access to Google Workspace or to Microsoft 365 is also school property, is also a school virtual campus, and increasingly also needs to have the same level of scrutiny, regardless of what device that content is being generated from. The table in the bottom right kind of shows you a little bit of the breadth that we can go into, but at its sort of heart, it's looking at those collaborative document spaces where students are collaborating in a document together, or even just a document that's been created by an individual student and uploaded into their OneDrive or Google Drive. I've got quite a few too many examples to draw on and show to you of where a student has written a diary / suicide note and chosen to upload it in this platform and in this way. And then there's a lot of information being held there that we need to make sure we're giving due oversight to. The other major one to call out in there is images as well. That idea of making sure that we're scanning those images to make sure that those are appropriate images to be shared, and particularly around violence and also explicit content being shared within your network and within your tenancy of Google or Microsoft. So all three are available. The typical use case is that you will install the agent, the smart agent we call it, on the school-owned devices. And then, depending on your flavor, you would probably integrate into either Microsoft or into Google. But there's nothing stopping you doing both if you are a school that operates in both of those worlds, and you can have all three of those protections. We view that it's important to make sure that there's no rock being left unturned, that there's no empty spaces or gray areas of your technology suite, ultimately which we're not protecting and we're not able to find information from. We see that as a very vital part of in making sure that you are protected and that you're collecting all of the information that you are duty bound and should really be reviewing. And we're getting all this information, but like the guidance said, we want to be very mindful about how we're presenting it back to you. So the idea that we have an interface and a case management system built into our platform that isn't designed specifically for IT staff, it's designed for education staff. It's designed to be intuitive, user-friendly. It's designed to give you functionalities that you need to audit and effectively manage a case. Things like making sure that you're assigning that case to a particular deputy DSL or a pastoral yearhead or to the right person who's going to take action. And that there's a way that you can audit that this case has been dealt with, closed, and move forward. But even within the case itself, when you're making that judgment, we present you a timeline of the browsing history before and after, just a short amount that's there, alongside screenshots and images from the device at the time of that alert. That gives you that immediate context that you might want to take to be able to understand. But I appreciate it's a small part in the screenshot I'm showing you, but just below where it says Caleb's name in his user profile there, you can see that we're on the overview section within the alert, but the tab right beside that is website history. And I really want to call out how important it is and how useful it is to be able to hop over into the website history to view, in this scenario, Caleb's full website browsing history. we need to understand, is this alert just a one-off? Is there a pattern here? Are there other aspects of his browsing that would tie in with this that increase our level of concern, or indeed dial down our level of concern about what's happening here? And getting to that context quicker, and having that information within the one platform is all part of working with Lightspeed and having Lightspeed filtering and Lightspeed alerting all within the one interface and space. And that context we see being increasingly important in getting the depth and the rigor that goes into analyzing the potential risk of a case that we may have. Analyzing the risk and looking at that is a very subtle art. It's a very tricky thing to do, which comes with practice and experience, and of course, information in this context. But we often find, and we hear from safeguarding leads, that it's something that they need a lot of support with, and they want to have support with it. They feel the burden, perhaps, of being the person who has that responsibility. And of course, we encourage schools, multi-academy trusts, local authorities to share that burden and to have multiple people included in the system, looking and reviewing and supporting this process. But outside of hours, or whilst those staff members are teaching a class, there can still be critical things that happen that require a relatively immediate response. We've heard that loud and clear over the years that Lightspeed Alert has been here, and for now 3-4 years now, we have been running a human service. We call them the human review team, or the safety specialist team. They're kind of used a little bit interchangeably, but they're there to provide an extra layer of support. Ultimately, any case that is deemed by that AI, when it's analyzed and defined by that machine learning model to have an imminent threat of harm to a young person or a high risk, will ultimately, yes, the DSL will be notified, but so will our human review team. And these are trained professionals. They work for Lightspeed on full-time contracts across the globe. We've got a couple here in the UK. We've got a couple further east, and we have a body across the United States as well, making sure that we provide 24/7, 365 coverage of our alert schools that are using our platform. Anytime that high or immediate threat comes through, it also adds and flows into their human review category interface, where they are using the same context, they're using the same information, they're using their experience and knowledge and the training that we've provided with them alongside their previous expertise and their previous roles, from schools and student counselors to mental health professionals to members of law enforcement. We have a real range within that safety specialist team who are acting like additional eyes and ears for you. That could be during the school day to make sure that if something is happening immediately, you're getting that information. Or it could be outside of school hours, that you're escalating to an escalation list whenever something with an imminent threat has been identified at 7-8 p.m. at night. On the right-hand side of the slide, it's just an example I pulled together from a couple, a fairly typical but rigorous example of an escalation list that we might see. So for a particular year group, there may be a deputy designated safeguarding lead who the Lightspeed safety specialist would call if they had an imminent threat. What happens if they don't get through on the phone, or the text message that they send, or the email that they follow up with? They're going to follow to the next level. And you can see how that can quickly move from being a school contact to that assurance responsibility that the local authority or the multi-academy trust have over the safeguarding of students within their group of schools, to even local authority contacts and social services, right the way down to emergency services if we've ultimately exhausted other options. It's a really robust process, and I can say that with as an ex-user of the software who, my first example of using it, I woke up at 6 a.m. to 4 missed calls from the safety specialist from 1 a.m., 2 a.m. to be able to start to unpick my emails to go that there'd been something important that happened overnight. They didn't reach me, they didn't reach duty social work. Ultimately, they only could reach Police Scotland in my case, but a welfare visit was conducted, and I woke up to a safety specialist report and a police report, providing me with the information that I needed, and safe in the knowledge that that incident that had happened overnight was taken care of, even without my particular concern. So a really important tool that supports what you're doing there, and the wider aspects of what you're looking with, how you're supporting safeguarding. So those are the four major things that I wanted to kind of talk about around the idea of making it easier for you to complete your safeguarding duties on digital devices. We wanted to make sure that we're giving you less false positives, only surfacing the right information, getting that from as many different corners and from the broadest, most comprehensive aspects that we can provide across your digital landscape, across the services that you provide, giving you that information in a way that makes sense, that you can use, that you can make decisions about quickly. And of course, if you're not able to make those decisions, that we're there and we've got your back to be able to support you and your safeguarding teams 24/7, 365. Those are our four major aspects. And that just leads me to move then into the final area of our webinar today. I can see that there's been a few comments that are coming in here that we've got. Still time to add yours if you'd like to. So we've got a couple coming in. Does your AI work in other languages than English? And we've also got, do you review posts in community languages, other languages? We have the ability to review multi-languages. So we can, those machine learning models are trained significantly in English. And we also have language packs for Spanish today, and we're working on Arabic, and we're working on Portuguese to be able to bring these to market very, very soon. We cover, as I say, it's a relatively complicated process, unfortunately, to be able to develop those models, and our data scientists are working hard to deliver those within the next couple of months. And we welcome the idea of further direction as to which additional languages that we should to look to support. In the meantime, we can do that individual keyword thing that I really kind of encourage not to be used, if it's all possible, but that is fully multilingual and is a little bit of a sticky plaster that we have there to support some of those efforts until we fully develop the language packs that we already have in English and Spanish today. Does the Microsoft integration only pick up on school devices? No, that's the beauty of it. So you can install our Smart Agent onto a school device, absolutely. But when you make that Microsoft 365 integration, you're doing it at what's called the API level. So you're authorizing a Microsoft account and Microsoft's cloud servers to talk directly to Lightspeed. That means it could be the student's phone, they could be on Teams on an iPad at home, or they could be logged into the family iMac, for example. They update a document, or they send a Teams message, or they send an email, and it goes to Microsoft servers in the cloud, and we then look at the servers. And that's exactly the same process for Google as well. So it gives you that more comprehensive coverage outside of that area. Can I have different escalation lists? Absolutely, yes. So that was a pretty big example I gave in that human review slide, the escalation list of who to call. And of course, that could be different depending on year groups. It could be different depending on different schools within your multi-academy trust or local authority. We fully customize that with you, and we can make sure our human review team have access to the right escalation list to call for individual groups of students, and we can customize that to your needs. Do you integrate with CPOMs? Short answer, yes. Long answer, it's brand new for us. We've been working really hard on this, and we have somewhere about 10 to 15 schools that are in beta of this at the moment. And we have that integration working really well at the moment. We're just on the sort of final dotting of I's and crossing of T's to be able to get this out to market this quarter, to be able to work with CPOMs to get that published into their integration store and to get that tool coming through. We've at the moment made a decision around what is flowing into CPOMs. And it's going to be that we make that integration of any time a case goes to human review and you get that case report from the safety specialist, we know that there's there's a lot of meat there. There is a lot of reality, and there's a lot of context that could flow into CPOM. So those alerts will be going and flowing as part of that. And we're seeing it working pretty magically so far. I'm delighted to get that out for general release as soon as we possibly can. How do you process CSAM, so child sexual abuse material? Now, it's a really interesting and a good question. I mentioned that we do image scanning, and particularly when we're looking at explicit imagery, we don't just make that available unguarded within that platform. You'll remember you seeing from the picture of the interface in that case management system, we include those images in that timeline. Not so whenever we're including images of an explicit nature. We put them behind a flag so that you have to click, an audited click, to know that you have chosen to view the content, to be able to see who has chosen to look at that explicit content. If you flag it to us as child sexual abuse material, or if one of our safety specialists gets to it before you will, we will remove it from the platform, as we are duty bound to do by UK and US law that we're supporting with. We take all of those image hashes and we make sure we pass them back to the Internet Watch Foundation and similar organizations that support similar efforts in other countries and jurisdictions too. So we've got a really sensitive and a really mature process for dealing with sexual abuse material that is created or self-generated imagery. How long is data retained? Data is retained for as long and as it needs to be. All of our servers are stored within the AWS cloud platform, and we provide unlimited data retention within the period that you would request. So if you choose not to enter a specific data sharing agreement with me, we will not be deleting your data, and we will maintain a record until you no longer are a customer of Lightspeed. We do have some customers that do want a particular retention period, and we can look to enter into a data sharing agreement that defines that. And we have processes in place to be able to make sure that we can remove any data that we need to, either after a certain time frame or on a specific request that you may choose to make. But the cases and the alerts, and if you choose to pair that with Lightspeed Filter, the web browsing history is retained indefinitely and is available in the platform for you to go back since the first day that you started using Lightspeed. One more, we've got a couple more. I'm going to take one more before I finish up our webinar directly on the 45 minutes that we promised. And it's about exporting. How can I export alert content for record keeping? Well, I mentioned and give you a little teaser on CPOMs, so the ability to send it into CPOMs coming soon. Before that, and what we're having just now is as part of that interface, you do have an export button, so you can download a really pretty attractive and easy to read PDF of that case, and that can be stored. It could be uploaded to another platform or printed if you're maintaining paper-based records. We see that happen quite a lot. The other one is we have a shareable link functionality that we can provide. The ability for you to share a unique URL that expires on a time frame that you choose, that you can pass to someone else. So typically, if you needed to be able to pass record information to the police, or if you wanted to just share that with another colleague who isn't normally in the Lightspeed interface, you can click the share button. You can choose to give them 1 hour's worth of access or a day's worth of access. You then give them a link that is clickable and takes them directly in without needing to authenticate. And that allows us to get that information quickly where it needs to be, where there is ultimately some form of imminent threat or some form of support that we need to give to a young person in a very timely fashion. So that's a great question. There are maybe a couple other ones there. And in fact, I can't help myself. I'm going to get shouted at for going over, but I'm going to touch on iPads a little bit. Key logging on iPads. Let me be clear that Lightspeed isn't necessarily key logging. Lightspeed Alert isn't key logging anything. It's looking at all of the submissions from a text box that are submitted. on an iPad, you're right, we absolutely can't keylog. We support iPads, and we look to decrypt that traffic in a different way that gives us the same visibility, ultimately. So we again, there's a few caveats, as there often is on the iPad platform, to make sure that we are getting the same, nearly the same visibility, the best visibility that we possibly can on iPad. And then we, of course, pair that with the use of 365 or Google Workspace data and information to provide the most comprehensive coverage that we can onto iPad as well. So I am going to stop. I'm going to step away from the questions at that point and say thank you for joining us. You'll all receive a copy of the webinar afterwards if you want to watch it back or share it. And of course, if you want any more information, or if there's specifics to your circumstance that you want to talk through with either myself or one of my team at Lightspeed, please feel free to reach out either to that email in response, or my email is pretty easy to guess. It's cmccabe, MCCABE, @lightspeedsystems.com. And I welcome an email from any of you to discuss your circumstances and to give some guidance or add just a little bit more color on anything that I've said today. With that, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today. If there's any more help, please reach out, but enjoy the rest of your afternoon and have a good day. Thank you.